for emotional reciprocity. Is Nick Cannon still able to reciprocate emotionally, or are you beyond that? And if you are beyond
that's
that,
an interesting question.
do you communicate that honestly to the women you date?
Absolutely. I think,
So
like
you
I said,
tell them,
I'm emotionally unavailable.
You tell them that.
You know what I'm emotionally available for? My children.
Why do you say that?
Because they're the ones who need.
Oh, you said emotionally available
for my children.
Okay, you didn't say
highly emotionally available.
Now,
me,
what would the women
I have, what I believe that I have to give?
No,
you know what? First of all,
no.
It depends on time and point.
No.
At the beginning of the relationship, they're gonna say absolutely.
If I spoke with your queens and asked them in the course of the relationship or just now, would you say Brother Nick is or is not emotionally available to the women he dates?
Absolutely. You know why? Because I'm doing the work. Because I know I'm doing things like this.
Hey guys, welcome to Little Black Bert 91. You know me, it's the governor. Listen, when I'm in that mode, I'm gonna have to tear some things up. Listen, is Nick Cannon lying or is he confused? Is he lying or is he confused? I want to be very honest. I do think Nick is a very honest person in some regards, right? And I think he's actually more so confused. When I say confused, what I mean by that, he lacks some areas of awareness. There's a blind spot in him. And I think what he doesn't realize is when he says certain things, like, you know, you're going to have to back that up, right? So when we just watched a clip here, we saw him say that he tells women that he's emotionally unavailable. But then they asked him a question, what were the queens that you have had children with? Would they say you're available emotionally? Yes, they would tell you that I'm emotionally available. How? When you told them that you're emotionally unavailable. So how would they be able to tell us that you are emotionally available? What changed that you're doing that? He said, oh, he's doing the work. But we're going to actually play some clips here. And we're actually going to realize that he has no clue what emotional availability actually means. He believes that when he gives out love, that's him being emotionally available. Let me quickly break down what emotional availability really means in its essence, right? Emotional availability is the ability or to be emotionally present and open to give as well as receive, to be reciprocal. Okay, to give as well as receive emotions or emotional connection of others. Okay, it is the ability to give and to receive. And if you've been following my channel, I talk a lot about attachment styles, which is the way that we attach emotionally in relationships. And we have 4 of them, which is secure, and then we have dismissive, fearful, and we have anxious. I believe Nick Cannon is of the fearful, avoidant attachment style. The way that it runs from abandonment, the same way we talked about Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, they are the same ilk. Dr. Cheyenne Bryant and Nick Cannon are of the same ilk because they run when there's conflict and they flee in abandonment, right? And abandoned situations, right? Of relationships. And you've heard Nick say it several times where he abandons those relationships because it's getting to quote unquote conflict, or they're asking too much of him emotionally. So he runs away, which is very much an avoidant trait in general, which is dismissive or fearful. But I think there's some traits that when he describes them, lean more to fearful avoidant. Why is that important? Well, in reality, because what we're seeing from Nick is when it comes to emotional unavailability, the attachment styles do things differently. The anxious person tends to be emotionally unavailable because they are over giving. How can you be that? Well, when you're over giving and not able to receive, you're in a problem. Anxious people tend to be in a space of always giving and not allowing the other person to give to them because they feel that their worth and their value is based upon them giving. So they lack the emotional, they often can be emotionally unavailable, even though they're so very present, right? In that moment, they don't give. They give, but don't necessarily receive in the right way. Then we have dismissive avoidance, who will give you whenever they feel like. They give you, they control what happens. I'm going to give you my emotional connection and my emotions to you, and I will receive your emotions when I want to. And then we have fearful avoidance, who oscillate between anxious and avoidant states when it comes to emotional unavailability. So they want to give and they want to receive. It becomes very difficult to give up points. It becomes very difficult to receive up points. They blow hot and they blow cold. They are unbalanced in their manner. I think Nick follows this particular trend and pattern very well. Why? Because I think Nick is in a space of where he does want to receive, right? He does want to receive. He does want to receive what you have, but it is on his time. And I do believe that he likes giving because he speaks about how he gives love and he's an over giver. He's a fantasist. He's a romantic, hopeless romantic, which tends to be usually fearful avoidance, who tend to be fantasists and hopeless romantics because of the dynamics of the environments that they grew up in. So I do believe that Nick wants to be able to give and to receive, but his inability to do so is because he's not actually tapped into his emotional unavailability. And we're going to break that down in the rest of this video for you guys. But if you want to know more, make sure you follow this video to the end. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notifications of the uploads. Let's get into this video because there's a lot more to break down, right? Let's just follow this conversation that Nick Cannon has with Dr. Umar.
But doing things does not equate to emotional availability. That's like the father, stay with me.
Okay.
That's like the father who pays all the bills, everything's taken care of. But guess what? The wife doesn't feel the love. She feels the care. And one of the mistakes we make as black men, Nick, is we often equate providing with love.
And it's also a way of actually emotionally distancing yourself from the relationship. You see, the problem that we have with emotional availability is that most people that are emotionally available, what they're running from is the anxiety of not knowing how to handle the relationship because they're afraid of something, right? Which goes back to our very point here. The reason why many of us struggle with emotional availability, right, is because we usually have an insecure attachment style. And then with that aspect, we are looking to control the dynamics either of the person, we're looking to the control of the person and the outcome. Okay, so many of us want it on our time when we want to do it, right? And this aspect of wanting it on your time is what makes you unavailable, because being able to be available is the understanding of mutuality as well as reciprocity. It is the ability to be present in that moment to be able to give and receive. You telling somebody that I can't deal with this right now, can we deal with this later on? It's still being emotionally available. When you say, I want it when I want it, or we're going to have a conversation about it when I want to, when I feel like I've deactivated, when I feel like I'm not so emotionally aroused. Let me put it plainly. When I'm not so in that space, then I'll have the conversation, which there are some aspects of which is needed in a relationship. You need to be selfish enough to be able to say what your needs are. But there's an aspect of control where we say it is always on my terms. Whether it's a conversation, whether it's your feelings, whether it's understanding, whether it's empathy, whether it's boundaries, it's always on your terms. Okay. And so being actually unavailable is usually because we are dealing with pain and wounds that show up itself in fears. Well, we heard it with Cam Newton when he said, my fears trump my actual wanting and desire to get married, right? And Dr. Umar says that again in this video for him, right? And I think for Nick Cannon, his fears of rejection, abandonment, or betrayal, shame even, prevents him from wanting to go into committed relationships where he gives his all over a game. He won't do that anymore because the last time he did, he got burnt. And when he got burnt, it confirmed already his bias about what he believed about the world and when it came to love and commitment when it comes to relationships, which is if I give all of myself, I'm liable to be hurt, abandoned, rejected, or betrayed by the person I'm in a relationship with. So I will not give all of me. Let's just play a little bit of a clip and you'll see when he says this very thing. And that's what I know that people who are emotionally unavailable will say these things. Listen.
A hopeless romantic. I love the idea of being in love and but to actually on a level of I'm dedicating all of me to all of you. I'm not in that space to be able to give my all.
Would you still consider yourself a hopeless?
Now, the reality of the situation is that many of us are in these spaces too, right? We struggle to want to give all of ourselves because we've realized if we give all of ourselves, we've been hurt by people. And also because we are afraid to actually, we are afraid because we're not sure about our own discernment. But the fear that we have is because we're afraid that we don't trust our own discernment and judgment and decisions when it comes to relationships. We're not sure how to elicit good boundaries. We're not sure how to really be open to receive what someone's giving or to give enough to somebody else, because when we do, we feel like they may take advantage, they may run away and leave it, they may crush our hearts, they may do something that will cause us to have some pain, which we've experienced oftentimes in childhood, and we do not want to repeat that pain in our adulthood. So when Nick Cannon's telling us that, yeah, I tell women that I'm emotionally unavailable, but then literally in the next few sentences tells us that actually, no, the woman, I'm not sure how to, I don't want to say what the woman would say because he's afraid. Why are you so confident to tell us that you tell women that they're emotionally unavailable, but when we start questioning it about what the women think about you, you have a problem with that? Well, because you're very surface and you concern more about your image than you are concerned about the full truth of what's happening to you. I don't believe necessarily that Nick Cannon is a full narcissist or anything like that. I believe that many of us carry these same tropes about ourselves, right? We are concerned about image. And if you think you're not concerned about image, really deep your whole entire life, you really go and look at some of the actions and you realize you do care about your image. Most of us do. We're human beings. We care about image. But when we allow that to trump the way that we actually show up in relationships, because we're afraid of the emotional aspect where we don't have safety in that relationship, right? We're afraid because we don't have safety in that relationship. Then we're going to cause ourselves to do things and say things that are not in alignment, like what he just did when he told us that he's emotionally unavailable and tells women they're not. He's not emotionally unavailable. But when we're asking what would a woman say, he's afraid that the woman would have a what? A bad report. And I think I'll do that in a part 2 video, because I've got about 5 or 6 videos I need to drop. But that he's afraid of the bad report. Why? Because he's placed a lot of emphasis in being a nice guy. Remember that video I did a couple of weeks ago on my other channel, Dark Arts? If you haven't go watch it, go watch it. Where he talks about when he talks about his manipulation skills and being the nice guy. A lot of us are concerned about our image because we don't want to be labeled the bad guy, right? We don't want to be labeled as a bad person. And so if he now has to admit that the woman would say to him he's not great, it's because he's afraid of the criticism and what that would actually mean. It would mean facing up, owning up, and actually doing something about what the actual feedback is. Look, myself as a dismissive avoidant, recovering and becoming more secure, I realize that I struggle with criticism. Why? Because I failed to put a difference between when you criticize my behavior and when you criticize my actions versus when you're criticizing me as a person. The fragile ego doesn't allow me to differentiate very well between action, behavior, and me. When you're criticizing my behavior, I'm labeling it as you're criticizing me, which tells us we have a low self-esteem and low self-worth, and we're not able to differentiate between the two. If somebody says that my behavior affects them, it shouldn't be that I now personalize it and then internalize it to be about my whole entire being. It should be simply about the actions. Nick, when you show up, Nick, sorry, I just heard Hannah's voice from Love Is Blind. But when you are asking the question about what would the ladies think about you and would they say that you're emotionally available, and you tell us that yes, they would, when you know they wouldn't because you just told us you told them that you're emotionally unavailable, it's because you're afraid of what the truth is. You're not a great partner. You aren't a great partner. You're not good at all. And that is a place that most of us have to come for, both men and women have to come to. You are not a good partner when you're emotionally unavailable. But the reality is, emotionally unavailable people find other emotionally unavailable people, which is what Dr. Umar actually pointed out. So in part 2, what I'm going to discuss with you guys is we're going to go a little bit deeper, because there is more to break down, right? There's more to break down in terms of the emotional unavailability and availability, because Nick Cannon talks about love languages and stuff like that, right? And doesn't realize by him stating his love languages, he was actually showing us he was emotionally unavailable, because he did not understand that emotional availability requires reciprocity and requires us to understand other people. I will break down emotional availability more later on. Listen, I'm still doing my coaching as well with clients. I'm taking 3 clients a week now, no more than that. And I'm you can do that with the link down below in the description box underneath Q Jump. Sign up for our coaching before 2025. You get me, baby. And also join our 100 Club. We have a new thing that we do every month where we have conversations on Zoom and we discuss relationships, right? So join our 100 Club. We've had it for the last 3 or 4 months. It's been really cool and really exciting to have. So we'd love to see you there, guys, as well. Much love, much appreciation. Look out for part 2 of this video.